Welcome to Lorema, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. If you are not here for Preservation Rocky Mount, I hope that you will stay for Preservation Rocky Mount. And if you're here for Preservation Rocky Mount, thank you for coming. We have a sign-in sheet that's going around. I'm not sure where it is right now. Oh, it's in the back. So if you have not yet signed in, please do so. We love to know if we have members in the audience, if we don't have members in the audience, and how you heard about us. And if you'd like to stay in touch with us, we would like to be in touch with you. We have heard recently from our members that sometimes they're not getting our emails. So if you expect emails and are not getting emails, please check your junk folder. That happens a lot with MailChimp, so please check. If you're still having troubles, let us know and we'll do what we can to troubleshoot it for you. So this program is the first we've had in a while. We're going to just a minute kick off with Peter. But I also want to tell you about some upcoming programs that we're really excited about. In December, what date is it on? December 4th? December 4th? I think it's December 4th. But we have our holiday event. It's for members, so that's not to exclude anyone. If you would like to come to our holiday party, we would love you to be a member. So please sign up and join us. Can you guys hear me now? Yeah. Okay. It's getting better and better as the night goes on. Okay, so our holiday party is in December, so please come. We'll also be having our membership business meeting in January, on January 7th, and we just got confirmation today, it will be at the Mac Haven, so get very excited about that. If you are, it's very nice. If you are not a member, those are both member-only events, but please become a member so that you can participate and celebrate with us and learn with us. All right, I think that's all I have to say. Without further ado, Peter Vardy. He's our brilliant historian, so here he is, and we're going to learn a little bit about High Points today.
I'm not sure about the brilliant part, but I'm going to get a stool here.
Just like in Sunday school, Peter.
What's that?
Just like in Sunday school.
That's right, that's like Sunday school. Except I need to use this to hold my notes. If I were to ask you to pinpoint the center of Rocky Mount as it was 100 years ago, say around 1920, I bet most all of you would put your pin in the map right out here at 5 points. And the reason that you would do that likely would be that this intersection is an unusual intersection in Rocky Mount. I don't think we have another 5-street intersection in Rocky Mount. And it has some unusual buildings. The May and Gorham building is a distinctive building, and the People's Bank building is a monumental building, the largest building downtown. And it's also always been a high traffic location. So I would expect for those reasons that you would identify this site as the center of Rocky Mount. And this place has continued to evolve. Just in the last few years, Edgecombe Community College has expanded their campus with the Medical Simulation Center. We're celebrating tonight this renovation, this improvement in this building. And we're hopeful for some other improvements. May and Gorham is ready to be renovated at some point, and we're all hopeful that the old post office will see new life. So this is a special place, 5 points here in Rocky Mount, but it's not the first place that you would identify as the center of the city. So if I were to ask you, where was the center of the city 200 years ago, say around 1820? Just about everybody would say the falls at Target, right around Rocky Mount Mills. And what was going on here then, back then? What I'd like to do is kind of trace back to see what has happened in this place and how we get to this place here at 5 points. So what was going on back there 200 years ago around the falls at the Tar River? Agriculturally, a number of plantations all around, mostly in Edgecombe County, some in Nash County, and cotton was king. These plantations were producing cotton big time. 2 major commercial operations going on at the falls, at the Tar River. One of them everybody I think is familiar with, and products. Rocky Mountain Mills began production in 1818 in the textile, cotton textile business, with the Battle family running that operation for years and years until they ended up, I think, mid-1990s. And the other one was run by the Bunn family. Bennett Bunn, they produced naval stores. They harvested pitch from the pine forests around, distilled turpentine, produced lumber, and sold those products down the river. I think a lot of it went to the British Navy, actually. So we had two major commercial operations, the Bunn family and the Battle family going on. One of the Bunn family members, Redmond Bunn, operated the Great Falls store. I don't know exactly where that was or is, but it's there near the falls. And so these Bunn family people were also merchandisers, mercantile people. And so he had the store. You could buy powder, shot, nails, tools, implements, buttons, and the big seller was Applejack. The Bunns had a huge apple orchard beside the Stonewall. Stonewall was the Bunn family home, built in 1830. And so they had a huge apple orchard nearby. And of course they had the post office. We're going to be talking about a post office, so we'll follow a post office theme. Post office was built in 1816 there in Battle Park. And there's a marker there that knows where that is. So that's what this place looked like in 1820. That was the center of the place. The only way in here was to come up the river, and the goods that were being produced, the textile material and the naval stores were being shipped down the river, going down to Toronto and Greenville and other places downstream. The next big thing that takes place here is the railroad. The railroad was built in 1840. It was completed in 1840. It was the Wilmington and Weldon Railroad. So it ran from Wilmington, following sort of the fall line, you might say, along the rivers. Here comes up through Wilson, Rocky Mountain, ends in Weldon near the Virginia border. 161-mile long railroad. At that time, it was the longest railroad in the world. The railroad built a depot down at where Falls Road intersects with the railroad. And so now the textile products coming from Rocky Mountain Mills and the naval stores coming from the Bunn family operation, instead of being paddled down the river, came to the depot and then loaded onto rail cars and shipped down to Wilmington and points beyond. There was a hotel here too because of the railroad. Hotel, I believe, was where the Douglas building is now, corner of Thomas and Main Street, the wood frame structure. I believe it was there in the 1850s. I don't know when it was built, what year it was built, but it was there in the 1850s before the war. Would have been a passenger station. Wherever you have a passenger service, you also have a hotel, and so I believe the first passenger station was there near the hotel. I've never been able to find where it is exactly. I can't tell where it is, and I'm going to guess it might have been the lobby of the hotel. I don't know, but that would have been where the first passenger station would have been, right near that hotel or in the hotel. The next major thing that takes place is the Civil War. Begins around 1860, ends 1865. The economic impact that results from the war is a demand for tobacco. We hosted visitors from the Union Army all around eastern North Carolina, and they sampled the tobacco here, high-quality tobacco grown in this area. And when they went back home, they wanted tobacco. And so it didn't take long for the farmers to switch their crops from less on cotton, more onto tobacco. And so before long, tobacco was the number one crop, and cotton, which was king, was the number two crop. So now we are a three-crop town, you might say. We produce tobacco, then cotton, and then the naval stores. And those are the products that are being shipped out of here. That generated the need for the tobacco market. This place called Rocky Mount became a tobacco market. And back in 1900, there were 4 tobacco warehouses that had developed. And all of these were up on the north side of town here, north of Thomas Street, and on both sides of the railroad. And over time, more and more warehouses and tobacco production facilities developed there. The next big thing that takes place is the railroad shops. Wilmington and Weldon Railroad built acquired property in South Rocky Mount, and they built some shops there for the repair of their cars, their freight cars, hopper cars, and whatever other cars that they had there. This is what they started. In 1899, the Wilmington and Weldon Railroad became the Atlantic Coastline Railroad, and the Atlantic Coastline recapitalized, and so they generated some funding that resulted in the ability to expand those shops, which they did. And then they refinanced again in 1907, the Atlantic Coastline Railroad did, with more money for a further expansion of those shops. Thomas Emerson was the president of the railroad at that time, the Atlantic Coastline Railroad, and so we today still refer to those shops as the Emerson shops. At that time, somewhere around 1,300 employees there in the yard, and another 250 employees at the station and on the road and all around. So a major employer, huge payroll for this area. To summarize all of that, to indicate what the impact of all of those changes were over that period of time, just look at the census data. So the census in 1890 and then 1900 and 1910. Census number for 1890 was 810 people. 1900 was 2,937, and then in 1910, 8,000. So we basically go from 800 people in 1890 to 8,000 people in 1910, a 20-year period. You know, to us today, 8,000 people may not be a lot of people, but the growth, the growth was really, really phenomenal here in that era, in that time. That's what was going on. That's what this looked like. 2 major developments, I would say, took place at the physical landscape of this place that changed. One is Tobacco Town. If you're looking back in that era, 1900, 1910, and so on. Tobacco Town, we're building tobacco warehouses, tobacco processing plants. The Imperial Tobacco plant was built in 1903. China American built in 1918. I don't know the dates of all the others, but if you can remember having gone through that area, you know, warehouse after warehouse after warehouse, all of them brick, it was a pretty major development. The other thing, the other piece of our landscape that changed is downtown. This place that where we are now, and all around us, this downtown just popped up in that 20 to 30 year period, 1900 to 1925, thereabouts. So a few dates just to play with it. The first City Hall and Fire Station, which would have been the next block to the north of us here, in 1903. Train station, the third train station, the one we have now, built in 1903. The first building built in 1903. Main Grove across the street over here, 1904. This building, 1904. Crest Building across where Virginia's is, 1909. People's Bank Building right up here at the end is 1918. So you can see a whole lot of development and growth. The landscape of this place is changing enormously and rapidly in response to the population growth and economic growth that we experience in this place. When I asked the question, is there one center of the city, or might there be more? And I raised that question because for some of us, we might answer the question and say, where would you drop your pin on the center of Rocky Mount? Some might answer the question by saying it's the Douglas block. For me, in my community, the center of the city might have been the Douglas block, not 5 Points. And so the city had undertaken a renovation of that block number of years ago, completed that about 10 years ago. And so now we've saved that, now we can remember what the Douglas block was, what it meant to the people in this community, or some of the people in this community. And I think it turned out pretty well. It's a great addition to the city. But we're here to celebrate 5 Points. We celebrated Douglas block. I think did a good job with that, and so we're here to talk about the 5 Points. So one of the buildings that was built is this building. It was then known, I think, as the Shore Building, built in 1904. I've always known it as the Alford Building. I think it's been called the Alford Building for many years. Built here in 1904, built by guess who? DJ Rose. DJ Rose was a builder here, and his office was on Rose Street, right around here behind the post office. And the occupant here was the First National Bank of Rocky Mountain. We're getting an adjustment. I was wondering if you were going to cut me off there. So I'm going to let Kevin is going to show some slides and talk about this building, so I'm not going to say much more about it than that. Looking forward to seeing that when it's done. The next one I want to talk about is the 5 Points drugstore, which we now know as the Main Gorham drugstore right across the street. Built in 1904, expanded in 1906. The original owners were Redding and John Bullock. The building has a trapezoidal shape. It's shaped that way in order to fit the lot that it's built on. The lot shape is determined by the street configuration, and so it's a little unusual shaped building, but it's built to fit that lot. And it is because of its style and presentation, it's really a landmark in the city. It's a visual landmark and a pivotal location. You have the arched window over the front door. It's unusual and beautiful. And there's a florid cartouche on the side of the building, on the Washington Street side of the building. We should have brought we should have some slides for that so you can see what that is. But on the next sunny day, come down here and take a look at those buildings. You can see what it looks like. The interior remains intact. At least the last time I was in it, which was about 3 years ago, the interior was intact. So there's the original floors, the original metal ceilings, the shelving where the drugs were stored, the soda fountain, and I think it even had the original cash registers there. So it really has been frozen in time when you step inside that building. It's a really beautiful building. And so we're hoping at some point that it will be renovated and put back in service, put back in use for this 5 Points area. 1986, the Nottingham Company acquired the building. They renovated the space on the second floor for use as offices. They used the offices until about 2001. Then they moved into the United Federal building over on Franklin Street. November of 2015, they donated the building to Downtown Renaissance. And I believe the building has been sold to
Yes.
Jesse, right?
Yes.
Is Jesse here? No. I was kind of wanting to get an update on what the status of the renovation might be. Another building is a prominent building here at 5 Points is the old People's Bank building, built in 1918 by guess who? DJ Rose. Yeah. 18,000 square feet of space in the building, a monumental scale. It was a 5-story building, 1 story below ground. Housed the Rocky Mountain National Bank, which changed to the National Bank of North Carolina, which closed in 1933 for a year, reopened in 1934 as People's Bank and Trust Company. And People's Bank and Trust Company operated that as a bank until they merged with Planners Bank to form Centura. I don't remember what year that was. I believe it was around the mid-1980s, somewhere in there. They had sold the building at some point. I think there were a couple of owners in there. Then Self-Help Credit Union came and bought the building, and in 2004, they bought it in 2004, finished the renovation of it in 2006. I think about a $4 million expense, did a beautiful job on the exterior and as well as on the interior. It's really, really a beautiful building inside and out. Somewhere along the line, the clock that was located on the side of the building had been there for many, many years, went away. I suspect that one of the intervening owners sold the clock. The clock was an iconic feature here in downtown Rocky Mount, and it was important to the public transit system. Public transit system used the corner of Topboro and Main Streets as the transfer point, so that the way the bus system worked here, there used to be Safety Transit, then later Tar River Transit. The way it works is the buses circulate on the Nash side on different routes, and they circulate on the Edgecombe side on different routes, and they come together once every hour at the transfer point, which for many, many years had been here at the corner at the People's Bank. And the drivers needed that clock to make sure that they were on schedule and on time. The way it would work is if you lived on the Edgecombe side, for example, and you're going to work on the Nash side, you would get on a bus, come down to the transfer point, get off that bus, wait. On a pretty sunny day, it would be a pleasant wait, but on a cold winter day or a sweltering summer day or a rainy day, it'd be unpleasant. But you wait and pick up the next bus, and that would take you on to where you're going. The city, in 1995, renovated the old Railway Express Agency building and turned that into which is beside the train station, turned that into the bus station. And that's where Tar River Transit operates out of. So the people who are using the bus service now can wait inside where it's protected. One of the memories I have of the old People's Bank is when I worked at the old City Hall, which is up here on the next block. My boss, the city manager, would take me by the hand every now and then and say, let's go get a cup of coffee. And so we would go down to People's Bank down in the basement. And at 10 o'clock every morning, they had what was called the Heads and Tails Society would convene for 30 minutes. And it would be Vernon Seacrest with the Telegram, Don Wilhaff, the store across the street, and the managers and owners of other stores would all convene right there. And there's a whole lot of joking and laughing, and I suspect a little bit of politicking went on as well. It's called the Heads and Tails Society because at the end of the session, they would flip a coin, and whoever lost the flip had to pay for the coffee. Post office was built 1914 by DJ Rose. This served as the main post office for the area until the mid-1960s, when the post office was relocated to the area that's beside the headquarters fire station. 18,500 square feet of it. It does have a basement in it and a half story above. So it's a beautiful building, rock solid building. World War, I think. I'm going to that building for safety. It was acquired by Edgecombe County and Edgecombe Community College a long time ago, but they eventually had sold it to Self-Help Credit Union. And so Self-Help, I think, has been trying to find someone who would redevelop that building. I think it's going to be a challenge for that. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. A couple of other things to note here at 5 points is one is Edgecombe Community College itself. Back in the early mid-1980s, Charles McIntyre, who was then the president of the college, Edgecombe Community College, came to the city and said, we would like to build a satellite campus in downtown Rocky Mount. We'd like to put it right across the street over here on this block. And we'd like to partner with the city to get that done. And so the city and Edgecombe Community College partnered up on that. And the deal basically was that we would join together in acquiring the property, bought all the property in the block. I think the concept of it was that the city would buy the property that would be used for parking, and the college would buy the property that would be used for the actual classroom structures themselves. And so that's what took place. I think that the buildings were completed, must have been around 1985 or 1986. And just recently, as I mentioned earlier, the college has completed the expansion of the campus by building the medical simulation center here, which I think was about a $12 million project. Major improvement, major face that's put on one side of 5 points, done very well. The city and Edgecombe Community College continue in an institutional, I guess, kind of a relationship, sort of a partnership, an unspoken, unwritten partnership, where we share concerns about parking availability and land availability for hopefully future expansion. Maybe the college will continue to expand 10 years or 50 years from now, we don't know. But we want to have the land and infrastructure available for them if they should. And so that partnership, I hope, between the city and the college, though it is pretty informal and I guess casual, I hope that partnership could continue as people change. Impact of it, obviously, would be the addition of students here in the downtown area, and I think this coffee shop should be the major beneficiary of the presence of the students at the college and the professors, students and teachers at the college. Another change that was made here in the 5 Points area was the redevelopment of Harambe Square. It's this block, the 100 block of South Washington Street. This is another partnership deal between the city and, in this case, the Rocky Mount Edgecombe Community Development Corporation, and from now on I'm going to call that the CDC. The city acquired the property, can't tell you the year now, but it would have been around 1989 or 1990 or somewhere in there. Acquired the property. We demolished some of the buildings on the north end, which would be where some of us are parked right now. Demolished those buildings to build a parking lot. And the Community Development Corporation renovated those buildings, and, well, first of all, entered into a long-term lease with the city, a very long-term lease. I think the lease expires in 2044 or something like that. I doubt I'll be here to see that, but it's a long-term lease. It was supposed to look like it's a sale of the property in order for them to qualify for historic preservation tax credits, which is what they use to help finance the improvements to the buildings there. What they did was renovated the second story space into apartments. There are 22 apartments up there on the second floor. And then the ground floor space is renovated for commercial occupancy. The CDC maintains its offices there, and they've done, I think, a great job in maintaining the property and managing it and keeping it up. A couple of interesting things about that redevelopment. One is that the buildings right behind us, we didn't want to tear the building down. We wanted to keep the facade of the building, but we needed a parking lot. So what we did was we sawed the building, the back half of the building, the back 2/3 of the building, took a saw and went up one side and across the roof and down the other side and demolished the back half and kept the facade. So on that sunny day when you come down here to look at the window and the cartoon from the main core building, come around here and look at that building. We saved the facade in order to keep the historic presentation of the buildings along that frontage of Washington Street. The other thing you might want to know about is there's an alleyway between the Douglas building, Harambe Square buildings and the buildings that face Main Street. And so we paved that with concrete, but we left some inlay pavers so that to make it look like there's a railroad track that goes down the alley. taking some liberty maybe with historic preservation, but it was kind of a fun thing to do. So it's just because this is a railroad town, we thought it might be interesting to do. So these are partnerships between the city and the CDC, the city and the college. There are other partnerships that resulted in preservation projects. Station Square is a partnership. I don't know, is somebody related to Lionel here tonight? Maybe? There you go, right. Yeah. Yeah. So that was a partnership between the city and Mr. Bynum that resulted in the redevelopment of the Station Square block. Preservation, we tore down a bunch of buildings, but we saved, you all saved a number of buildings, and they've been in productive use ever since when? Would that be around 1984, 1983, 84, somewhere in that time period. Another partnership would be one between the city, with the city for the Imperial Center, another partnership to develop the Douglas block, and then there was a partnership for the Event Center. So the idea is that we can do good work when we work together. We don't do so well sometimes, or we're kind of slow about it when we try to go at it on our own. So if we can get to the place where we can work together on things, we can make some changes. I see a couple of challenges for this area, the 5 Points area. One of them is the post office. The post office is a beautiful building, but it doesn't lend itself really easily to an adaptive reuse. If you try to save what it looks like on the inside, it's just a real challenge to do that. I'm sure there's some bright architect somewhere that can figure it out if we can find the money to redevelop it in some way. But I believe that's a challenge. It's been a slow project to get going. And the other one I'm a little reluctant to talk about, but it is parking. The only parking that we have here available for 5 Points is on-street parking, right? People parking in spaces along the street. And the parking lot, it really goes with Harambe Square. That parking lot has about 38 spaces in it, and it's supposed to support Harambe Square. But if we have more activity, more business development, more commercial development, more activity in this area, we're really going to need more space to park our cars. And so that space that is beside the post office is now a vacant lot. I believe has been proposed for housing, but I'm hoping that there be careful consideration given to trying to accomplish both needs. One would be to provide for the housing in some way, but also to provide parking so that the transformation of this area of our downtown area, the 5 Points center point, would continue. I want to conclude with a little bit of trivia. There is one business that began at the turn of the century here at 5 Points, and they're still here on Washington Street. Anybody have an idea who that might be? The Moore's Bicycle Shop. Yeah, Moore's Bicycle Shop opened in 1913. Their shop faced on Tarboro Street, right here where the medical building is. 2 years later, 1915, they bought the space right directly across the street where the medical center is, and they operated there 1915 to the time that we bought the property and chased them away, so that they could, so that we could build the property for the college. But they moved down to the end of the street at the Rawls and Winstead building. I went there the other day to get my memory refreshed as to what they did in the early years. And they did just about everything you could think of. They repaired outboard motors for fishermen. They sold fishing rods and tackle. They repaired victrolas. They fixed locks. They sold Indian motorcycles, sold bicycles, and they sharpened just about any kind of blade, lawnmower blades, and knife blades, and scissor blades that you might have. So, and today they are really just in the bicycle business and in the lock business. holding over. But that's a business that now is over 100 years old. It has beginnings here at 5 Points. It's still alive. It's just down the street. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Let's take like a couple questions before we move on to Kevin. Are there questions? Yes, please.
How did the two wars of the Depression affect Rocky Mountain?
Will you repeat that?
World War I, World War II, and the Depression? How did those affect Rocky Mountain?
Well, what was it? I guess the question is, what's the impact of World War I? Trying to think of a couple of specific impacts that I can think of for that. One is that there was a break in building. So the last building that was built in Rocky Mountain at the beginning of the war was the post office, 1914. That was the last building. And then the first building to be built after the war concluded was the Old People's Bank building. So DJ Rose had to take a break. I don't know if he had to serve over in France or what he was doing. So that was one impact. The Imperial Tobacco Company was impacted by World War I because the way that's a foreign company operating in the United States, and so they were not allowed to produce cigarettes or tobacco products. What they had to do, because of tariffs and other regulations, what they had to do was ship their product back home, back to England for distribution to the United Kingdom. So they were experiencing ships being sunken by somebody, by the Germans. And so what they decided to do was to wait out the war. So they built warehouse after warehouse after warehouse around their plant to store the tobacco until the war ended. So that's why why that Imperial Tobacco Company is as big as it is. What's the next one? World War II? Depression. We talked a little bit about change in banking. The banks had difficulty. I don't really know about what other banks had difficulty here, but there was the problem that one bank had to close, but then they quickly reopened as People's Bank in order to continue. I think also the city's utility infrastructure suffered because there was no investment in it. And so it was being overloaded, really being bled until after World War II, the city began to reinvest in that. So there were impacts, by the Depression and by the Second World War. Second World War brought tons of people through Rocky Mountain. I'm from New Hampshire, and whenever I would go home every summer, visit with relatives and other people around. Where are you from? From Rocky Mountain? Oh, I know that place. I've been there. And these are people that are now gone, but they're World War II veterans. I know that place. I've been there. Somebody fed me from the Red Cross or something, gave me some coffee at the train station. That's how they remember this place. So this place was a major place for troop movement.
Peter, in that period of very rapid growth in population, how did the city accommodate the housing needs? Housing is something we face now.
Yeah, I don't know that. We had, there was a huge expansion of population. There had to be a huge expansion of housing as well. And so housing and this would be segregated neighborhoods, so there had to be housing for African American people, but also housing for the white population as well. I don't know. The private sector had somehow to come through with that. You see, you look at the development of Rocky Mountain. The commercial area is here downtown around the railroad tracks, And then immediately adjacent are the neighborhoods, the residential neighborhoods, black and white. They're tied closely to the downtown area. Beale Street neighborhood, neighborhood over here, Edgemont, Happy Hill. All those neighborhoods really relied on the businesses that were here downtown. Any more?
Is there much discussion as far as like the old city hall being demolished, other buildings like that? What was the thought process behind some of that? Were they just too dilapidated to be able to keep them?
When I say what was the thought process, a candid way to answer that, it would be that it probably wasn't the sensitivity to historic preservation by the city back then as there would be today. So that building that was demolished, when we vacated it in 1982, I think it was demolished in 87, that building had, let's see, it was the old Masonic Hall, and it was also a theater, but it readapted in 1936 for use by City Hall. Beautiful building on the outside. It had been cut up and chopped up into a bazillion little pieces on the inside, but it was just no thought about saving it at all. The idea then was we need parking. We need parking. Tear it down, and we did at that time need parking. So there was that. Building right beside it was what we call the Bailey building. Dr. Bailey's office was in there. Beautiful building, and it had a beautiful fluoride cartouche on the side of it as well. No thought about that. Down it comes. So the sensitivity to preservation back then was not what it is today, or what I hope it still is today. I got a question for you about the post office. We talked about two post offices. One was built in 1816 at Rocky Mount, now Battle Park. This was built in 1914. I'm wondering if there might have been another post office. You know, it's a 98-year span between post offices, and the people had migrated. Well, population center had developed here, not there so much. So I'm wondering if there might have been a post office somewhere around the Douglas building, somewhere around there. Anybody know?
We can look it up on Sanborn Maps.
What's that?
I said we should be able to look it up on Sanborn Maps.
Yeah, the Sanborn maps should show that. Yes, I haven't seen that. Any other questions?
Thank you, Peter. All right, so now I'm going to give the microphone over to Kevin. He's going to share his experience renovating.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Kevin McLaughlin. I'm the owner, operator of Lorema Coffee House. If you hadn't heard yet, Lorema means my friend. It's a word I learned in Uganda. And my main goal with this business is to be a place of crossing paths and connection for people. I started writing the business plan in 2013 and was looking for a space to open this shop in Durham, which is where I came here from for all the years following, and just had a hard time finding it, and I was really wondering why. I felt prepared. I had worked in coffee shops and been around the world studying coffee, and just, I guess, needed to keep learning. So 2017, right about this time, I was getting ready to put this dream on the back burner, apply for different jobs, and then a friend of a friend connected me with Jesse who owns this building, and I called Jesse and I said, I heard you have some buildings in Durham. Do you mind if I look at them? He said, have you heard of Rocky Mount? I said, yes, I've heard of it. I actually went through UNC's Master Public Administration program, which the current and prior two city managers here have been through. So I had heard of it because they came and spoke to our courses, and heard that Peter also went through that program. Very rich history and great alumni network. But anyway, I said, okay, I'll I'll come out and take a look at Rocky Mount. I don't know much about it. I've heard it's got a lot of overlap with Durham in that it has this history of tobacco and textile industries and a strong railroad presence. All of those things certainly attract me. And also a lot of historic spaces downtown. The first thing I noticed and was drawn to is all these old buildings. I think more and more people want to connect to what they are experiencing in the past, and they want to know the story, what we consume even. More and more people are like, where's this coffee coming from? Where's this food coming from? Oh, you have a partnership with a local baker. That's fantastic. And I think that that really resonates with us. We want to know the origin of what we're experiencing. So that really turned me on to Rocky Mount. And the more I learned about this place, the more I found that my particular vision for this dream of mine aligned so well with the needs that I was learning exist here at Rocky Mount. Now, as I say, the coffee house to me it can be a great intersection point for our community, and so what better intersection point than a 5-point intersection right on the corner. I was really into the natural light. I've been pushing hard since day one to get these top panels restored with the glass blocks. Just for example, just the feeling of natural light. I'm really into that. So yeah, I mostly want to just kind of give that little overview, and I'm going to share some photos over the past 2 years, what it took to get the building here, just my experience. Like I said, 2 years ago I came in, first saw it. It was disgusting in here, to say the least, and I'll show you some of these photos. Took about 6 months to do the demo, and just stripping back layers that had been added on over the years. I learned that in the basement they made liquor during Prohibition. That really, interested me. Of course, in here it was a bank, and we've got the original vault there, and it's large enough to have a meeting room inside. That certainly attracted me, and honored to get to open this space to the community. Upstairs, furniture store and then different offices over the years, and I also learned that the top floor was actually a mortuary in the early days. And, it's just like, you can't make this up. It's fantastic. To get to be able to honor what has come before. I just do that with the most humility I can. I recognize that I'm just a small part of a very big story here in Rocky Mount. I'm just honored to be here. Be charged with the task of taking care of this building and taking care of anyone who walks in the door. So really thank you all for being here. I'm going to now turn to some photos. Feel free to stop me at any point if you have questions. I'm going to try to go through these pretty briskly. There are a good bit of them. All right, and we're back.
Plan distraction.
Okay, yeah, we've been open now just about 2 months. Haven't slept much. Thank you all for bearing with me here on the technology issue. I've got some wonderful support here on that. But for the moment, I'll just sort of talk about what it was like. So as I said, the first 6 months were basically demo. We were peeling back layers. There were 5 layers of floors we found on this original. That included cement, a couple different kinds of tile, plywood, and carpet. I realized a couple months in I should have been wearing a mask. During that part, I was like, why am I hacking? I'm not a smoker. This is weird. But I wanted to, honestly, I wanted to be in here all the time just to make sure we took as much care of this building as we could. And yeah, it took a lot out of me, but I'm so pleased with where it turned out. So the main things, of course, electrical. We had to put in all new outlets, run new wiring for the lighting. The building was built incredibly tough. One of the photos here, hopefully we can see, it took one person like all day just to drill through that side wall. We had to put a new electric meter in, and just getting through the layers of brick and cement is incredible. So, I'm just really pleased with how well they built the building so many years ago. A cool thing about the lighting, these pendants hanging are from Wildwood, based here in Rocky Mount. Really neat connection, and the bronze, it just fit perfectly with the overall aesthetic. Sitting on top of the vault, we have a new HVAC unit concealed in there. This was not actually a wall up there. It's just a big box that is the vault. It's where you'll find me if we get any more hurricane issues. You're more than welcome to join. Maybe 15 people can. So we got that done. New duct work, all new plumbing. A real nice thing in the basement. Like I say, it's huge. Once was a speakeasy. I think it would make a really cool speakeasy again one day. That'd be phase 4. It's going to take a lot. It's pretty nasty down there, but we can see kind of, if you use your imagination, what once was. It's got really big arches where the light pours in through the glass block along the sidewalk. So it's just really beautiful down there.
I have a question. You
Sure.
mentioned earlier about the floor. So did you treat the floors with anything once you got to this layer? Because I'm guessing this was all original.
Yes, thanks for bringing me back to the floors. I love the floors. So, taking up 5 layers of gross floor to discover this, that was one of the real highlights of the whole process, especially the tile. You just don't know what you're going to find and what condition it will be in. It took a lot of processes to restore it, and we plugged some gaps with cement and with epoxy. We used a little bit of a sort of a Chinese tradition of filling a hole, that is a crack with a little bit of beauty. So we used a clear epoxy where there were tiles missing and put some gold glitter there. Just a way to take a blemish and make it a piece of art. Let me put my password in.
Yes.
You're proud of me for not saying your password out loud.
It's Lorema. All right. So the Charles Walker is a local guy. His company that he works with is called Floor, F-L-O-R. This was one of those moments where I was like, what are we doing? Is this ever going to happen? Haven't I learned enough about patience yet? That kind of thing. And all of a sudden, I see this guy trying to look through the windows, and I go out there and I say, hey, sir, can I help you? He's like, you guys need any flooring help? And I'm just like, oh my God, yes, please come in. So he does all this work, environmentally friendly products. And he just came in and was able to do the floors, both with original pine and restore all the tile. He also restored the vault door. He used this stuff called peel away. You place it on there, and I've got some photos on our social media about this process, but you place it on there basically for like 12 hours at a time, and it just slowly changes the composition of whatever was on there, which was a lot of different layers of paint and things. So he did that and then burnished with a rotating steel blade to get it back to original and then seal it. So he happened to have that skill, and he said, oh, well, I also restore old tables. Would you like me to build you one? I got this base from a furniture maker in Smithfield that closed down years ago. It's old growth redwood. He pulled like hundreds of nails out of it and put pine boards on top and added casters to bring it up to bar height. That's the communal table over there. So this guy just happens to pull up on the street, and that was pretty special. Let's see. Any other questions? I think we're getting there with the computer.
PowerPoint or on Google?
It's Google Chrome.
Yeah, open the
PowerPoint deck.
Yeah, any other questions?
On social media?
Yes, Lorraine Coffee on Facebook and on Instagram. We also have a website, lorrainecoffee.com. Always posting, the more I learn about this space and this place, the more I'm fascinated. So I love to share that. A couple of weeks ago, Lisa Meadows happened to bring in Frank Meadows Jr. That's right. He was like, "Oh, I opened my law firm upstairs in 1950." And just to have that happen, I mean, it just rocks me. Like, it's just so clear, that we're here for a time. We're put into each other's lives for a purpose, and I'm just happy to hold space for those kinds of crossing paths. I just think that's so important for a community. Rocky Mount has this rich history, a lot of diversity, a lot of different communities that, I think we just need more interaction and more listening to one another and learning, opportunities like this just for education, coming together. And so that's why we're here. Okay, we got photos, great. Yay. Thanks for not all leaving. That was cool of you. We have another seconds there. Okay, so the city shared with me some neat old newspaper clippings and photos.
Is that a blood street?
That is right out front, looking west, so looking toward the train tracks from the middle of 5 Points. You can see our pillar there on the left. All right, this is the basement, just to give you a visual. So the basement, it needs a little work. We're going to do anything down here. But, it's really neat with the glass blocks. That I heard was the only place in Rocky Mount that has glass blocks along the sidewalk. And again, that was to provide light for them to make liquor during Prohibition, is what I was told.
Safe to walk on?
Good. Yes, it's safe to walk on them. There's another view. On the left, there's the door leading down the steps just outside. Right. Okay, so this is about the first time I saw it. There was another drop ceiling there when I first came in, but a lot of potential. And right away, when I looked in that corner, I said, "That's where the stage would be." And these three big pillars, that's how the bar needs to wrap around. It just fit. Just looking to the door. As you can see, those ceiling trim that needed a lot of restoration, but given the age, I mean, in really great shape. There's a piano. There you can see the vault. It's just a kind of a box in the middle of the room. It's ripping up the floor. All the different floors from all the decades. This space was most recently used by the county for offices upstairs and community college classroom space before this campus was built across the street. Started to see the original wood coming through. That was exciting. There's the haze. That's now the bathrooms. First go of sanding the original pine floors. Redoing the ceilings. That's the kitchen area, which was the bathroom prior. Didn't know that. Starting to frame in the bar. Almost everything I have, I bought a few key new pieces, but most of what I have I got from restaurants that closed down throughout the triangle, or coffee shops I had worked at in Durham. So yeah, just from the ground up, this is it's a creative reuse project. It's Alicia Hilton Daniel, my friend from Durham, who's a designer and general contractor. She wasn't the GC for this project, but gave me some great pointers and assistance in the drawings in particular. Casey Spivey, he did all the woodwork that you see. The bar faces are from a mill in Raleigh that exclusively produces railroad ties, and all of this wood was discarded by them, and he picked it up and processed it and brought it here. So that was going to be railroad ties. For whatever reason, wasn't making the cut for the railroad, and he picked it up and processed it. So this was the team working. Well, they did a lot of work in here, but they were going to go through the process of restoring the tile, and that was about half a day to get that far. And then, like I mentioned, this guy Charles just walks in and he's like, "Oh, I can do that with a machine and some chemicals that are environmentally friendly and save tons of time and money." So that was amazing. And they could focus then on other work. That's when we finally got the front doors to open. That was a big moment. Just getting the floor looking spiffy again. Yeah, each day before leaving, I had to screw that 2F board to lock the door. So, all is well. Framing in the wall above the vault. Covered up the floor because it got finished and sealed. And little by little, we just kind of kept going. There's the process I mentioned. That's Charles right there. Close up of the vault trim. Yeah, I gave it this crazy blue color. And then it just kind of chips off. I mentioned that earlier. It took a guy about a day to drill through the wall outside for the new electrical. Had a piece of granite cut, placed beneath the espresso machine. There's the stage. Casey left a sign for everyone to clearly mind it. All right. Casey let me help out sanding. HVAC. Bathrooms. That's where the record player sits over on the wall. Same wood as the bar faces. We got those to put plants in the windows. Retail shelving. That's my car. The improvise. So one day this trim that's going around the vault, that gray strip, they were like, "What do you want us to do there?" I said, "Okay, I'll be back." I didn't know they only sold it in like 30-foot length. Make it work. All right, starting to get the colors in. That green is my very favorite color. Lighting. No longer a bathroom, now kitchen. Okay. Shelving, hand sink, painting. It's a very light blue on the ceiling, get the feel of the sky. The morning light in here is absolutely fantastic. First time we get the lights turned on, espresso machine brought in. Let's get the mug open outside. And then September 11th, we opened for the first time. People came, and honestly from day one, just felt so much support. And I've never opened a business before, but I feel like it's rare that people come in and thank you for doing this. Usually it's you have to invite them and ask them, to support what you're doing. But I've just felt really supported from day one, and I think a lot of that is the interest that I have in partnering with everyone and just making this about this place and the people here, not about me or my particular ideas about what this should be, but we're co-creating this thing. And I'm just really excited about the opportunity to have the role that I have in that process. That was the first beer I ever poured here. They were just married a couple weeks after that, so just last month. And there you have it.
Do you want to take some questions?
Sure, I'll take any questions if there are any. Yes, ma'am.
What would you do differently if you were starting over now? Here.
Well, maybe I'm not ready for these questions. What would I do differently? I think in the thick of it, I needed the reminder that just to have the big picture in mind. It never actually felt worth it until we opened. It was just such a hard process on me. I was in here overseeing all the contractors and coordinating all of that, and trying to simultaneously get the business, get ready to open the business. So it was a really hard time for me, and I didn't know if I was doing a good thing. I believed in it, and everyone I talked to was like, oh yeah, that's great, when are you opening? But you don't know until you actually do it and you open the doors, and that's when all of a sudden it felt totally worth it. So, I would say just keeping the big picture in mind and believing in the dream that I had, and just seeing that it's worth it if you just persevere and have patience. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Is a lot of your traffic from the school or people downtown, or do you find that people come from across town to come here?
Yes, I would. Yes is the answer, and I'm happy to say yes. When I first came out here a couple of years ago, one of the people I heard about was Brian Rankin and Milton Miles. I heard that was a very well-liked business downtown, that he had great sandwiches and great coffee, and I was like, okay, I need to meet this person, and he let me take him to lunch, and we talked for 2 hours, and it sounded like he was just a little bit ahead of his time with the interest in downtown, getting new life, and so one of the things he told me is that, there's a deal with the train tracks here, it's two different counties, there's a historical tension around this, and he's like, there might be some people that won't even come because you're on the Edgecombe side. And I said, wow, that's fascinating. And what an opportunity for me to make a space that is inviting for everyone, that is so welcoming and accessible, and inviting, that it can bring different kinds of people together. To me, that challenge was the greatest opportunity, to hear about that. And I've seen it from the start, a lot of people from ECC, from here and there, from Wilson, people are coming, people are like, oh, thank God now I don't have to drive to Raleigh to get good coffee. It's just like, it's been everyone, and that's exactly why I wanted to do this and why I wanted to do it here, by the train tracks, and just, make it that everyone would be welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.